Good evening, everybody. This is Last Minute Movies, and today's episode is the first of its kind. We're going to be talking about a horror movie, and not a regular horror movie.
The greatest horror movie of all time, Igor. We're talking about The Thing, my personal favorite horror movie of all time. Now, I know I love Alien as well. It's a masterpiece, but there's just something about this film that it does it for me. I don't know what well, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what it does for me. So, the original Thing as well, the one that came out in the 80s, not the 2011 CGI fucking nightmare
or anything in between.
And not the Fantastic Four thing.
Yeah.
Not that.
I mean, there's an oddly huge amount of movies named The Thing, I realize. But we're going to talk about the one that matters.
And there's a large amount of things that are called The Thing. There's this thing. There's The Thing from Marvel. There's a lot of things, you know?
Without a further ado, why don't you do The Thing? Why does The Thing matter to you, Ollie?
Well, okay. So, growing up, I watched I shouldn't have, but I watched a lot of R-rated movies, right? I watched The Matrix, Terminator, Alien. I watched that when I was really, really young. Really young. I'm talking I was 7, 8 years old, kind of young, watching those films. And it was awesome, and I'm fine mentally. Some would disagree. But basically, I never watched The Thing, when I was a kid or anything like that. I always rewatched Terminator, Alien, and a lot of other horror movies as well. 80s horror movies are the best. Don't at me. Or at me. We could debate about it, We'll talk.
No. But I think, dude, I perfectly agree with you. I think 80s horror movies is where it's at. And primarily because I think back then people would go to a movie theater to be completely carried away. And
exactly.
Just, really get their money's worth. And that's
the 80s... The 80s also established the horror tropes that we know today. The films that came out in the 80s really established even if they were funny ones like Scream. I think either that came out in the 80s or 90s, whatever it was, that spoof of a horror movie created its own kind of genre. You know what I'm saying? It created its own thing. But I didn't watch The Thing until I was in my teen years. I didn't watch The Thing until I was in my teen years, right? Mm-hmm. And the first time I watched The Thing, I was like, Mom, I've always been I watched it with my mom. I'm like, I've always been interested in watching this film. Let's watch it. And she was like, okay, sure. I guess we could watch it. And we sat down. And of course, of all things, I decided to eat when I watched The Thing. And not only did I decide to eat, I decided to eat spaghetti. So
God. Oh no. Dude, everything between the dog, every surgery, every disectomy scene. God damn.
Yeah, all the tentacle shit while I was eating spaghetti. I was like, well, that's great. But no, obviously I was blown away by the movie. It was an absolute masterpiece. I love it on so many different levels. I watch it every year if I can. And it's just great. What was your introduction to the film, Igor? I'm interested because Igor didn't want to watch this film. I was like, let's watch this film, Igor. We need to watch this film and talk about it. He's like, no, I don't want to watch this.
Yeah. So let me elaborate on that. Basically, I don't mind the movie. I think you can learn a lot from it. It's just I don't necessarily shoot horror and I don't write horror either. So for me, it's I watch it once, I learn what's in it, I experience it for its full potential and really soak it in. And then I don't really have to go back to it to fully grasp what's happening. And I generally just kind of have that thing with body horror. I love it as a craft of storytelling, but I feel like I need to be in a really specific place in mind to fully enjoy it. One of those movies is actually The Fly. I love that film for everything it has to offer and the story it tells, but I can only watch it once in a blue moon, once every 3 or 4, maybe 5 years.
It can get kind of nasty. I don't mind. I have a bit of a tougher stomach when it comes to that, but this film and The Fly definitely are very, very gruesome films. So I won't lie.
Yeah.
But yeah. So those are feelings of the film. Let's talk about the story though. So Igor, what is the film about?
God,
what is the film about?
This is my ultimate challenge for this entire podcast is learn how to give a scoop of the movie's plot without doing it for 20 minutes.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you like 2 minutes to summarize the film. Go.
Fuck. Okay, timer starts. God damn it. Okay, so in Antarctica in winter 1982, where the year the movie was made, I guess, there's a research station with a bunch of people. There's like a dozen Americans that are there, a bunch of dudes. There's no female characters in this movie. They at some point a helicopter flies by filled with Norwegians. Well, there's two Norwegians and they're trying to shoot a dog. I guess it's like a traditional hunting method in Antarctica.
Traditional Ukraine.
Oh God. Oh.
Norwegian, not Ukraine. Norwegian.
I don't have time for this shit. So,
you're closer to that region than I am. All right, go.
I need to finish telling. So they get to the fucking the helicopter flies by. They end up shooting one of the guys in the leg. So they get shot themselves. It turns out that the dog was infected with some kind of alien monster thingamabob, and it starts to kill
parasite.
Literally, yeah, some kind of alien parasitic creature, and it wasn't like as the movie turns out, it wasn't even a dog. It was like the alien essentially emulating itself and imitating.
It was social inequality. That parasite, not that parasite.
No, the dog was not infected with social inequality. It was infected with a fucking scary ass, uncanny, crazy like flesh, horrific bullshit. Anyway, so yeah, the dog was infected and it is now in the base. As the story progresses on, they go and investigate the Norwegian base. They find that they have uncovered some kind of crash site of an alien spaceship, and they recovered the alien. The alien was like frozen in a piece of ice, what turns out for 100,000 years. And as it thawed, it seems like it took over the Norwegian camp and killed everybody there. Norwegians were so fucked up. There's like this magical scene where they find a body of one of the Norwegians who had to kill himself so that the thing would not get to him. And you just kind of see the frozen blood. And that's why John Carpenter is John Carpenter. He is so amazing at creating that insane mise-en-scene.
John Carpenter is a masterful director.
Just like, I think I ran out of time now. But in a nutshell, basically everything that happens for the rest of the film is that thing gets into the camp. They slowly discover what it is and what it can truly do to them. They discover that the alien can imitate any, form of life, be it a dog like an animal, or it can also be a human. It can also emulate,
any organic piece of life. So anything that's living. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as the story goes on, it's just like this uncanny killing and attempts of these people to stay alive and kind of save the rest of the planet, prevent it from going into the rest of the world, because from running simulations, they find out that it's so good at taking over other organisms that it would basically spread across the earth like a virus and infect everyone within 27,000 hours. Beat that shit, COVID. Anyway. And that's kind of the rest of the story. The whole story is just this giant roller coaster of facts and shit that humans do when they're scared, and the scary things that humans do, and the really scary things that really scary monsters do. And just to not to undermine how scary that is, there is no CGI. Pretty much everything is a practical effect, and most of it is stop motion. And to say how scary it is, one of the men that was working on the film had to spend 2 years in a mental care facility because of the impact that making these stop motion effects of all of these monsters did to him. And if we didn't say it before, making movies is fucking hard. It's really hard. Even the student short films that Igor and I make, that's hard work. Imagine working this. Insanity. Insane hours. Okay, so we're talking about this story. I want to talk about a little bit about the backstory. Not the backstory, but just the process that it takes to make a film like this. So, as this film definitely, came out in the 80s, there's no CGI. Mm-hmm. There's no CGI at all, really, within the monster. Everything that the monster does, it's all practical work. Yep.
There's literally zero CGI. And it looks, even today's standards, it looks real. It's absolutely crazy. It's so disturbing as well because of the fact that it's practical. It's you can reach out and you can touch it, and it makes, for me, if the film was all CGI, I don't know if it'd be as good as it is. I think because of the fact that everything was done practically, animatronics, or they made all the body parts, the makeup, I mean, absolutely phenomenal job. And, in a way, it's unfortunate because when it first came out, the film actually didn't do that well at the box office. It was actually kind of regarded as a failure. It didn't do well at all because it's a remake of a older film called The Thing from Another World. Actually, if you didn't know that.
I actually didn't. I found out about it like 10 minutes before we started recording. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's a remake actually, which it's one of the rare remakes that's actually better than the original. So
We can talk of it as
Hollywood,
a reboot.
It exists. Reboots can be good. Hollywood, pay attention, take notes. Yep. But yeah, it tanked, but throughout the years, it's developed this cult following where people will like go and they'll rent this film or they'll buy the film or they'll watch it and they'll be like, God damn, this is really, really good. And since then, it's gotten like an ever-growing rapid fan base. There's comic books based on the movie as well, like sequel comic books that are pretty neat to read as well. So if you ever want to like check that out and see maybe where the main characters left off, because I know that we'll get to the ending. We'll get to that ending. But, if you want to see where McCready or Childs left off afterwards, read that comic. It's pretty good. I don't know if it's entirely canon, but it's still pretty good stuff. And
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
external material is always good. I think,
exactly.
Yeah, like if there's an expansion to this, and there is an expansion to this, many other of the Thing movies were created after that, but I don't think any of them quite beat the main one, like the original one.
No,
just because CGI was invented. Like if you think about it, right, in 1982, the computers looked the same way they look in the movie, like that chess playing machine. That was literally it. There was no way to CGI stuff, so stop motion was the way to go.
And, and speaking of that chess scene, that's actually the thing that I want to not chess that chess scene. The main thing I want to talk about that film is how, in a way, I don't want to say like completely broke horror norms, but it's so different from the typical horror film that you would usually watch because it's so reliant on the characters. And I think this is the reason why it's my favorite horror film of all time, is because of the fact that these characters are not dumbed down in order to service the murder that happens in the story. The Thing, this alien, is just that powerful of a force that it fucks everybody up. But the amount of smarts that these characters have and how we don't, it's funny because we don't often see the alien. We really don't. The alien, if you total the screen time, I want to say you probably only see it like actually on screen for maybe like, I'm being generous, maybe like 20 minutes or something like that. Like actually on screen doing stuff, you maybe only see it on there for like maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes or something like that. You really don't see the alien that often. Like I can name like 3 or 4 distinct parts where you're like, oh shit, there's the alien. And it's all about the characters relying on their wits, having to trust each other but not actually trusting each other. And I think that's the true horror of this film, is that obviously, the alien is scary as shit, but I think what's also scary is about how these people are reacting towards each other and how humanity kind of crumbles and how people go against each other once they're backed into a corner. You get to see the darkest parts of humanity. You get to see them being selfish. You get to see them being, killing other people, innocent people even. You get to see them doing all kinds of stuff to each other because of the fact that they don't trust each other. And I feel that this film is so relevant, like even now when we're looking at something like COVID, where you see very similar things happening with people not trusting each other, people going against each other's backs. And I think that even though that the virus, this alien virus, is the threat, the true threat is humanity. Because if they all got over themselves and they really got in there to try to help each other, I don't know if they would be as infected as they would be. And that's why the alien, it's going to take so little time infecting everybody, is because humanity is, there's a lot of commentary about how flawed humanity is and how divided that we are.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the true horror in a lot of
like,
ways of this film.
Like we all have this same biological vulnerability, which makes
Yeah.
us, you know, extremely exposed to any type of virus.
Yeah.
But in this specific case, right, their own bodies are their enemy in this case.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think like what you were talking about just human behavior and how that can also be destructive in the face of danger. That movie does it better than the most movies I see do it. Primarily because like they end up killing their fellow crew members, or I would say like fellow research scientists, question mark. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
like,
team members. We
yeah,
could
yeah,
call
yeah.
them team members.
Yeah, like they
Mhm.
kill their fellow team members, assuming that they were it, and they were not. They were not infected. And there's even a scene where someone says, "Well, that makes you a murderer," and you're like, "Well, yeah, that makes sense. They did it, you know, trying to protect them, but they ended up killing somebody who wasn't actually posing a direct threat." And
Yeah,
it's
my
a
man Keith
huge
David said
moment.
that. It is, but that guy also did try to attack the main character, McCready.
Of course.
McCready, played by the brilliant Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell is absolutely amazing in this film.
Yeah.
You know, him and Ripley, that's it. I gotta see them in a movie together fighting aliens, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I want to see.
We have to do this soon too, because like the clock is ticking and
Yeah,
they're
the
not
clock is
immortal,
ticking.
dude. They got
Yeah,
time, but they're not immortal. Someone's got to put that shit together.
We gotta do it. Alien, The Thing crossover, we gotta do it, man. And that's another thing that's so scary about films like The Thing and Alien is that like the body horror aspect, the body snatcher or the alien infecting you. It's just it's so like it's just so violating, you know what I'm saying? Like that this just creature is just gonna enter inside your body and you just don't, it basically you have no fucking consent over it, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
and
yeah.
I think that's just what's so like creepy and horrible about it, is how you don't stand a chance against something like that. Like even like it's crazy because even if like one cell gets on you or gets somehow in your body for the thing, you're infected and that's it. It's absolutely insane how the science of that works and how creepy that is. There's a YouTube video that explains it. I forget what it's called now. I'm gonna link it in the description though. So it talks about like the scientific aspects and theory of the thing actually existing. So it's really interesting. I'll link it in the description.
It's creepy as hell, you all. And honestly, like you're saying, I absolutely do think that that aspect of, you know, your body being violated by the alien is absolutely a huge part of the movie, because that's kind of the spine of it all. You know, you're scared that this will happen to you. But I think one of the like bigger parts that the film is trying to kind of dwell on is the sense that you cannot trust anyone in your own team, because any of them could be sick, which like, you know, it's a lot more, it's something to grip on and empathize with. And what makes the storytelling more appealing this way is that it's a lot easier to relate to a human being that is being in distress rather than to like an alien. And if all of them are humans, we look at them being terrified of the situation, and we ask ourselves, what would I do? You know, it's always the case. Like any kind of horror movie ever would have to kind of work with that format of the audience members thinking, what would I do? And if it's some
more than likely you do the same thing.
Exactly. And like the thing is, it's not even more than likely. I don't think I would be able to come up with something smarter than these people did in a given situation. And I think the film achieves that by placing it in Antarctica. It's a place that we're not necessarily familiar with. Like, you know, movies like Halloween or I mean, any other mainstream horror film, right? Suburbia, cities, cars, deserts. You're like, yeah, I mean, I have a general gist of what that place is like and how it functions. But when you're setting in a freaking, like, research facility in Antarctica, you know next to nothing unless you, like, actually you're really into that. And not many people are. Not a general audience.
And I think that they added I think putting it in Antarctica, I mean, I know it was in the original film, but I just want to talk about how that's such a creative choice, because the entire film, in a way, is kind of a commentary about the consequences of isolation.
Yep.
Isolating yourself from people, then you don't trust each other, you know. Imagine if these people, I mean, it might be a little bit harder if they were all friends or something like that, because maybe they'd let each other in, but I feel like it's a commentary about how whether too much isolation is a bad thing for humanity. And then so happens that the setting for the entire film is like in the most isolated part of the world, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 So it's those little things in filmmaking that takes a film from great to fucking like timeless. You know what I'm saying?
And I agree. And I honestly think that it's awesome that this film became timeless before the pandemic of 2020. Because like
Yeah.
now I'm watching it and I'm realizing how many similar motifs are happening there with isolation, like you said, that are just ringing these very specific bells that are just so messed up. But there was this big thing I had in mind. Oh, so speaking of Arctic stations, there's something I found out that like totally has nothing to do with the movie, but in the real Antarctic, like behind the zero line circle, whatever, in actual Antarctica, people who have to work, like those research scientists and facilities, people who operate those facilities, who have to stay there in isolation for 6 months at a time, 6 to 9 months, I believe. They actually have a tradition of watching The Thing on the first night before, like when the isolation starts, because the weather in Antarctica gets so bad that like even the planes cannot get to some of the remote bases that they have there. So people just operate there for 6 to 9 months at a time. And yeah, The Thing has been like, apparently it has been a tradition in that place for a long, long time now. And
That's amazing.
yeah, like I low-key
That's
wanna
it's such
be there
a
at
it's
some
so
point.
cool. It's I don't, cuz I'm an equator guy. You see this dark skin. I'm very much an equator guy.
I love me that snow.
He likes the cold.
I love
Yes.
the cold. I love my snow. I hate summer. I love snow. Snow is the shit. Russians be like that.
It's interesting. It's such a good like I don't even know what to say. It's just once again me gushing over a film. One of these days I'm gonna have to talk about a film I don't like, because all you guys see me do is just
Yeah.
giving films the work like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. No, it seems like
yeah.
nah, it's okay. You and I will have a whole bad movie spree eventually. But for
I
now,
can't wait.
let's stick to the basics.
The masterpieces of cinema. And another reason this film works so well, obviously, the special effects are probably, in my opinion, the best part of the film. I would say the acting is very good. The performances by Kurt Russell, by Keith Davids, by so many Wilford Brimley, Richard Mosser. I think I got that name wrong. Donald Moffat, whatever.
Moffat.
Even the dog. The dog's a great actor.
Dude.
Yeah.
I was gonna say this was surprisingly well framed, but I think the dog acts in the editing. Like a lot of these solutions came in the edit because they naturally
Obviously.
would. But yeah, I agree. No, that's like acting really drives this together as any horror movie would. I was gonna
Because it makes it more believable.
yeah.
Like
And
it seems like they're actually there. It seems real.
And it's absolutely
like that's
true.
how people would react.
I was gonna say that just like any other horror film, this film follows, like, while it seems to be extremely conceptual and kind of out of the line, this film follows so many of these, like, very common tropes of storytelling that horror films have. For example, like, don't reveal your monster, be ahead of the audience. And I think being ahead of the audience is something that the film is actually extremely good at. And it's better than most other horror films I've seen. Because primarily like the location that you're not aware of or like that you don't know much about is absolutely helpful, but also the discovery process, the release of information is framed in a way where you have no clue what's going on, just like your main characters, except the film is even more aware. Like it takes that extra step with the delivery where it's handling perfectly the place where the audience is at a certain place in time. For example, the moment Norwegians land, you're like, they must be bad guys, they gotta be shot. You're on the same page with the American guys. Then, they fly to the Norwegian base and they see all this horrific shit, and you're like, in reality, the movie's just kind of setting us up for what's coming, which, is beautiful in its own right. But you explore these kind of like hallways that gave me high-key Frostpunk vibes. If you haven't played Frostpunk, do check it out. Just the aesthetic alone is amazing. But as they keep going, right, they discover these little details and then they unearth the monster. And every time you ask exactly the same question as the audience member as the characters in the film do. And like it is totally done to create unity, and relationship between the characters in the film and the audience. But it's also doing this amazing nuanced thing where for the rest of the movie, for like another hour and a half it has to go, you will kind of inertially continue to ask the same questions as the main characters, because now this is the style of the film it has established. And carrying that is hard.
And it does that, and it does that, and it's not boring either. Like, a lot of the film is actually just characters talking to each other. But what's so good about this specific style of film, where it's a who did it or who is it, you don't know, so it makes you, like, it in other films where you might not be, like, what's good about Alien is that, see, this is a big problem that I have with the Alien films that come out these days, is that we don't have time. Like Alien Covenant, we didn't have time to connect with the main cast. So when they were all getting fucking slaughtered, I didn't give a shit, because I was like, I don't know who these characters are. I don't feel for them. I don't care. The great thing about Alien, the original Alien that came out, is that it took the first, I want to say like the first fucking hour of the film was just you getting to know the characters, you seeing their personality traits. So when they all died, it was that much more heartbreaking. Because it takes so long, it might have some pacing issues. I think I like it. I could recognize the pacing issues of taking the first hour to just establish the characters. I think it's necessary, but the pacing could be kind of off. But with The Thing, it's so well paced, and it's very quick pace as well. Like, they're talking, but it's very quick pace. But I think that what's so good about it is that the style of the film, and where you're like, who is the thing, who is the alien, it forces you to really try to figure out and connect and know who these characters are, because you want to know who the alien is.
Yep.
You're getting to know this character, and you're like, I need to know this character's quirks, his personality, what he, how he looks, how he interacts with people. So if he turns into an alien, I'll know whether or not he actually is.
Yep.
Yep,
absolutely.
And that's what's so good. It forces you to be connected to those characters. It's so brilliant. But it's so brilliant.
At the same time, I think ultimately in the end of the film, and that feeds into that effect even more, you realize that there are no ways. There are no ways to figure it out, because it's that good at imitating humans. When it's like, when given enough time to metamorphose into a human being, like there was no way of identifying it unless there was. Do you wanna tell them about the eye thing?
Yeah, okay, so apparently, I don't know if this is, I think it might be true, or maybe that John Carpenter, tried to imply this and it just didn't work out all the way. I think it's true, but apparently, like, while throughout the movie, you'll notice that the people who have, so, if you're looking at my camera right now, and I open my eyes, you see that little light right in there? Like, that little light that's shining, that little highlight right there. So, apparently, he specifically positioned the lighting to be like that to show that the characters that have that light in their eyes are human. Whereas if I had no light or anything like that and my eyes were just completely dark,
kind of like this,
they're alien. Yeah, kind of like that of Igor. They're completely dark. They're aliens. Yep. They're the aliens. So, it doesn't work all the time, because there are characters that the light shines in the film and they actually are the alien. I'm not going to tell who, because I don't want to give spoilers.
Oh yeah.
But that might also just be like, okay, you saw it for this specific part, but now that the scene is officially kicked off, we're going to do that. So I don't really know how that was played with, because I wasn't behind the scenes like that. But obviously, because I wasn't even fucking alive, but like,
for like another 2 decades.
It's just interesting. It's something where I would like to pick the mind of the people who worked on that film. If I ever got to meet them, I'd love to ask them about that. So it's just something really interesting.
Let's hope we do someday. But
yes, one day, Igor. When we make our own horror film, right?
Sure. I'm down. I mean, it's all about math. It's hard to make these things, but they work.
Igor doesn't like making films about horror things. He likes making films about people on drugs.
I prefer high concept bullshit. When you told me about the eye thing, I was actually really invested into the idea, so I couldn't help but kind of analyze the cinematography to see if this was a deliberate thing for myself, or if it was something that like the fans figured out over the decades since the movie came out, and just like, hey, this is the pattern. I think like there's a really valid reason to think it's deliberate. One of the first shots of Kurt Russell when he's drinking in a dark room, that highlight in his eyes is so articulated that like you think that, you know, this cannot be not on purpose. You know, I mean, I walked into it thinking that this is the meaning, but I just feel like, you know, if the movie is one of the first shots of the main character is setting it up that hard that his eyes are glowing, then like, you know, it seems like it's somewhat consistent from, you know, throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah, I feel like it. Was this your first time watching The Thing, or had you watched it?
Oh
before,
no! I watched it like twice before. It scored me the very first time. I loved it the second time, and this was the third time.
When did you see it the first time?
Shit. Actually, so the first time I think I was like 8. And I was like sitting on the couch doing stuff, and I realized that like there's some interesting, you know, science talk on the TV, and I was a big fan of like Discovery Channel and stuff, so I was like, ooh, they're talking about like cells reproducing and like cloning each other and stuff. This is engaging. A little 8-year-old me thought, and then he saw, you know, like it kind of followed up with another disectomy scene, I believe, and yeah, I was like, cool, that exists. That is now ingrained in my mind.
And then you saw a guy's stomach open and chomp on some guy's arms.
Yep.
And then his head come off, turn into a spider-like thing, and walk away. Right.
Yep. That is
that
exactly
scene is
what
fucking
happened.
Horrifying.
Yo, that head though, holy fuck. Honestly, okay. So,
I don't know how they did it. How did they do it?
Dude,
like, how did they do it?
I'm about to tell you everything about that shit.
All right, go.
Like, remember how at the beginning we said that this is a painful process making movies? While it is absolutely true, this movie specifically did stop motion. It has more stop motion effects than any other horror movie of its time. The film that kind of established the effectiveness of stop motion, and the film that everybody kind of breaks down when they talk about it, is American Werewolf in London, where
that's another masterpiece.
Another fucking masterpiece. But specific part of it is the transformation scene, for which the main actor had to literally lay on the floor for 3 days while they were filming it, because, you know, stop motion, for those who don't know what stop motion is when you have a figure and you move it a little bit, take a picture, a little more, you take a picture, a little more, you take a picture, which is, you know.
Yeah, if you know what stop motion is if you've seen like a Tim Burton film. You know?
Yeah, literally. I mean,
you know what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
If you've seen any animated Tim Burton film, yeah.
Yep. But the thing is, yeah, so American Werewolf in London kind of like is the main example of it, but that only does it in one scene, and that was that hard. You know, like 3 days laying on the floor type
the
hard.
werewolf scene? Yeah.
Yeah. And in this movie, like, almost every not almost, every monster scene features stop motion to some extent. Like, they do cut around with, like, you know, moments like when the fabric moves, which I think actually gives a better effect, because never forget that in horror movies, less is more. And just like every other good horror film, this follows this rule too. There is more. There are moments where you see the monster for what it is, and the uncanny juices and blood and flesh and all this shit that traumatizes you for life. But then you feel the same type of tension when you don't see it. When you see the fabric move, you shit your pants. When you look at like two actors talking to each other about it, and one of them turns out to be the thing, you shit your pants. When you see this like actor with his hands like, you know, basically being the monster, you shit your pants. Honestly, this movie reminded me of Shining in that way. Like, in the way it handles jump scares. Shining was creating just the ambiance that made you shit your pants continuously throughout the scene. In this case, it's just so gruesome, and with every shot, it just gets beyond gruesome, schizophrenia-inducing, nightmarish like type thing, that it also makes you shit your pants continuous. It's not like a boo, here it is, and now it's gone.
And the scares are worth the wait. It really pays off on the scares, because a lot of horror films, or just even regular films, you'll see the monster, whatever, and then it just cuts off immediately. And you're like, where did it go? That's the problem I have with these modern Godzilla films that are made. But it really pays off, you know. You get to see, when you see the alien, which isn't too often, you see it. You really, really fucking see it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah.
And you know what I think is also really awesome? You see it, but like, it doesn't have a form, and that idea inherently is very kind of uncanny to a human mind. Is that like
It's
you
like
know
all
that
these
there is
weird
danger
things combined.
yeah, like you don't know what it's gonna look like when you see it, because like set aside you don't know who it is. It might be one of the crew members. It's like it doesn't have a defined shape because its job is to imitate. Like
Yeah,
you can,
like it's like human then part dog.
exactly.
Then
like
it's weird shit. You know?
It's shape shifting, and shape shifting
It's
is
shape-shifting,
like I mean the idea of shape shifting has been around since mythology, and like that it holds still, because like basic human psychology, right? If something doesn't have a shape or like an essence to it, if it's ever changing, it becomes that much more mysterious and like potentially dangerous to our own mind. And I think like that definitely adds to that effect. But also like I just want to kind of talk about body horror concepts in general that the film utilizes, and like this is where John Carpenter really like steps in, and like this is where he holds the throne, and nobody like everyone else are either underneath him or like completely below him. Like it's an ultimate frame of reference, that movie, for stop motion and body horror, low key. But like
it's
I'm
a
talking
masterclass.
there are ways in which body horror can portray meaning. Like in The Fly, for example, right? Like that transformation is representing somebody dying of a terminal disease, right? That nobody can necessarily fix. And the idea of like that person being stripped down of their personality. The deliberate choice that the body horror artists made was to leave the eyes to be like one of the last things that he loses, because that would, represent the fact that the eyes is the last piece of his own essence before he becomes a monster. In this film, it is brought to an extreme because the principles that they use, right? They just wanted to feel and look as uncanny as possible, and showing like when you first see the alien, it is like a morphed bodies of several deformed humans, right? And then the
first time you actually see it, it's the dog. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Well, okay, technically it is true, but the first time you see like what is this alien creature, you see it like morphed into a bunch of shit.
Yeah, because I mean you don't know the dog is the monster back then, so you just see a dog, right? Until like body horror is a very visual element, so like just information they're releasing in this case is strictly visual. So like morphed human bodies with like body parts that are unnatural, and like when they examine it, they're just like these are regular human organs and stuff, but this cannot be all right.
And it's still alive. That's the creepy thing. Is that then later in the film, like you think about how they carried it, brought it all the way back, and then you find out later it's been alive the entire time.
The fucking
it's
fabric
fucking
moves,
creepy
man.
as shit. Yeah, man.
It's amazing. Like it's insane. Like, and this is why I love horror movies, and why like I'm not really into it now, but someday I will. If I ever get into horror, it will be because of these effects where you have these scenes that are magnificent and really hard to make, and they take a lot of detail, and they're like a roller coaster ride. But at the same time, horror movie gives you this ability to have nothing happen in the frame. Like barely anything happen in a frame, and you make 300 people shit their pants in that moment because they're watching.
It's all tone. It's tone. It's
tone.
Perfect. And the tone wouldn't work if the cinematography for the film wasn't so good. If it wasn't so good. It's the way that the camera doesn't like continuously cut every fucking 10 seconds like a modern horror film these days. It takes time to establish the alien, to show the dead body. To show the reactions to characters getting killed. It's not like you see. I feel like modern horror films are so tame these days because they want a wide audience, and they don't want to show like people getting disfigured and shit, but we see it in The Thing.
Yep.
We see people getting like brutally murdered, explosions of body parts and shit like that, and it takes its time onto lingering. The shots linger. It's like a Kubrick, Hitchcock, or Kurosawa type cinematography choices.
Yeah.
How the camera just lingers on what's happening instead of cutting always, you know.
Definitely grounds us in that space. And I also noticed that cinematography allowed for something really cool to happen very frequently, especially in the location that is not necessarily familiar to the audience. There will be a lot of establishing shots to just kind of show what the big room looks like, what the area looks like. Half the time I didn't need to see that, and half the time it wasn't even there. Like we do see establishing shots, like with the moment where they're in the restroom, restroom. Sorry, I mean like the hangout area with the pool table and the bar and shit like that. That's an establishing shot, but from that point on, I don't really remember that many because you're so invested into what's happening. You're just like, yeah, cool. That's a tool shack. You know, that's fine. I don't need to see it. And yeah, it's really awesome because they just make you invest into the story and they don't have to paint this set for you because, I mean, it gets destroyed anyway. Pretty much every object we see is like about to be destroyed, and I feel like that's another thing that's really awesome is like the amount of kind of set design that went into this. They didn't just have to design the set, they have to design how it's going to be destroyed, when, and like planning that shit around is just, I think that's magnificent in its own right. But
yeah,
there's something we need to talk about since we're talking about The Thing, right? Like there are.
It can't be the end. I don't know. This is a film. I feel I kind of want our audience to watch it because it's such just the stuff that happens, and then at the end, I don't want to give it away personally because I feel like that's such a like when I watch that film, it's such a special thing. It's why this film is always in my mind is because of the ending and like what. You know what they do with it. It makes you feel sort of empty in a lot of ways.
Well, you're making me want to elaborate.
I know. I'm sorry, Igor. I'm sorry.
So for those of you who don't want the ending spoiled, that are like compassionate,
we're gonna put in the film. Spoiler alert! Turn off the film immediately.
Pause the fucking thing. And go
or just watch the
movie.
Film. Yeah, then go watch the movie.
You won't be watching this. We spoil every movie we talk about. You can't talk about a movie for an hour without spoiling this crap.
True.
Now,
okay.
So yeah, right. It wasn't really the ending I actually had in mind. I wanted to ask you because it seems like everybody has their own theory on this. On like, what is the order of people getting infected in a way that matters? Because I feel like there has been theories about this, and there's so many different ones. By no means do I think that ours is going to be on point and spot on, because, like you said, you know, the nerds, they'll flame you.
Well, this would actually be an interesting video to make, you know?
Maybe.
This would be kind of a fun video to make. Okay, so we know it's the dog, right? We know it's the dog.
And like other dogs.
It's all about who attacks who first, right? Man, that's hard. I don't know if I could just do it off the top of my head.
Okay, so
I don't know if I could do it off the top of my head like that.
Well, all right.
It's difficult.
What is the name of that?
Who's the guy that was in the room that the dog walked into? Because for sure he got infected, right?
Technically, yes. But I think in the end of the day, when he gets shot, and like his body's laying there to test his blood, it turns out that he is not it.
But was he the guy where the dog walked in? Like, did the dog walked into that room? Was it that guy?
Yes, as far as I know.
Guy, right?
Yeah. Like what I think.
So weird. He didn't get infected.
You see, what I think happened is that the alien is just really it's smart enough to not infect that person that soon, because you know it would need to deform itself into its, I want to say original form, but like its original form is a lack of form. So like.
Yeah.
It takes time to do these things. So the way I think, like, right, so the dog was definitely one of the first infected. And then somewhere along the lines, and I, like, can't quite pinpoint when, but, like, the guy who was locked in a tool shed got infected.
The doctor?
I don't know. I think the doctor was actually outside. It's the guy that was in a tool shed. I don't know if he was the doctor. He might have been. I don't know if there were two old guys.
There was two doctors. There was two doctors. There was the doctor that got absolutely ravaged by and got his arms like chopped off.
Yeah. That's the other guy.
Off. And then there was the other doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that got locked up in a tool shed. So like I mean he turns out to be the main kind of infected being, essentially.
You know what would have been interesting? What if he was infecting them all along? And then pretending like him destroying everything was him pretending like, oh, the thing's gonna come after us. That would have been
Yeah.
kind of interesting. I don't
You
know
see-
if that was the. I don't think that's the fact. But
I
that
was
would be
convinced that's what it was, because that scene
No,
where he
interesting.
like he made a noose for himself while locked up in that little tool shed, and there's even a scene where he pleads to let him back in. He's like, I'm okay now. I'm no longer angry and shit. And you know, before that, it seemed like it was an anger outburst where he destroyed the radio equipment and all this other stuff. Like, I honestly do believe that, like, the filmmaker will be ballsy enough to basically say, yes, Alien is that good at, like, emulating humans, and this is what happened.
I mean, it could have been because he was the one that was dissecting it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
And
maybe you never know.
I think the theory was that, like, he was holding a pencil while pointing at the flesh, and then he placed it by his mouth, and that's what's infected him at that time. But again, I'm not sure if it's the same doctor. Just because there are so
I don't
many
know.
characters.
It's interesting. I feel like this would be a good video to make. We might make this video one day.
If y'all want a video essay on who and the order of people that are getting infected,
Order.
yeah, leave a like
Yeah.
and write it in the comments. I mean, honestly, I feel like every kind of discussion of the thing ends up in the debate on who gets fucked first and who gets killed
Exactly.
first.
Yep.
Schizophrenia elements in the movie, which inspired a lot of the body horror too, I think are the reason why it is timeless. And by schizophrenia elements, I mean very deliberate kind of like body parts that were used in the special effects, like the eyes of the dog that are like multiplying, and in the kennel you kind of see that moment where it turns into this bulb of flesh, you see eyes popping on it, and that's like, it really gets to you because like I mean one of the versions of schizophrenia you can have is like having eyes stare at you from different surfaces just kind of open up, and I cannot imagine living a life like this. Like, holy crap. Like, imagine your whole life just being a John Carpenter movie. Ah.
Yeah, it would be terrifying. John Carpenter, the talented director who also directed the original Halloween movie, masterpiece. Great at horror. You know, that's his bread and butter.
Absolutely. I mean, he is the king. But now you think about like other elements like teeth of the dogs and like the fact that they pay so much attention to faces of these like mutilated people being present in those things, and like but by far I think the most fucked up moment of it was the head, when it just fucking detaches of a guy and becomes an entity on its own. Like, fuck. Like you see, it is creepy as shit, and that thing stays, I think, with me at least, that stayed the most. And at the same time, this whole body horror dysmorphia shit is turned into a giant plot point where, like, it's a storytelling device where the head detaching is actually a piece of information that our main character is going to see and go like, it seems like any cell of it is its own living organism, is trying to protect itself, so if we all draw blood and try to damage the blood, it's going to try to protect itself. And it ultimately works. Honestly, like this is one of those like a perfect example of a horror film being smart. Like genuinely being smart about the concept it's writing and the people in it and the things that those people do to survive. Like,
Yep.
you know, like we said at the beginning, right? An audience member is looking at it and like, what would I do? And then you see them do it and you're like, yeah, pretty much that. You know, like
Yeah.
it doesn't lose you for a second. I mean,
Nope.
there might have been, I guess the one time I felt a little weird was when they just kept splitting up instead of trying to figure that shit out altogether. And maybe there was like a teeny bit of an extra unnecessary kind of unreasonable behavior coming from the people. But honestly, like, if you see chunks of flesh of dogs trying to fucking attack you and you flamethrower them to bits and just like
It's pretty
understanding how
terrifying.
fucked up it is, yeah, like I mean, I will probably be acting
Yeah,
even
it's that fight or
weirder.
flight instinct, man. You know?
Yep, it's fucked up.
It's as we said, it is a masterpiece. So
hmm
watch the film, guys. Watch it.
What was the scariest moment for you?
I don't know. I'm like too invested in this movie to be really scared of it anymore, to be honest. Because every single part I analyze, because it's such a masterpiece of filmmaking, in my opinion, that I've kind of become desensitized to the scares. But I guess the part that makes me feel the most like, oh, probably the head detaching from the body, becoming like a spider thing.
Yeah,
That's pretty fucked.
yeah. You know,
The dog was also pretty fucked as well. like attacking the other dogs, so you get to see how it affects people like that.
The more I think about it, I'm realizing that there's a very specific flow to the movie, where like every monster that we see kind of tops the previous one that we saw before. Like the dog was scary as shit, right? But like, you know, it was obviously extremely detailed and it was a big moment.
It has a hierarchy of danger.
Exactly, because from that point on, right, you see the guy with the hands that gets burned alive right away. Like you at that point, the information in your head starts to fuck with you just as much as the visuals in the film. While the dog was purely visuals, the guy getting burned is like, oh fuck, these can look and be like humans, and oh fuck, he's definitely it. Like you know, that really messes with you. But then you look at every other moment in the film. I think that what the film was kind of trying to achieve is to make that final confrontation in the cave that was dug out to be this big moment that is technically like the scariest, because if you think about it, right, it's like the ultimate boss fight, because that thing is now huge. It no longer has to look and be like human. It literally just like goes at him from like underground, and again, not seeing but like knowing it's there is really works. But then, like, you know, you have these giant tentacles show up, and then you have this, like, giant thing, and then the dog heads pop out of it. So it's kind of like everything you've seen up to this point being...
It's all culmination.
Yeah.
It's like the final boss of a video game, yeah.
Exactly. I feel like the movie was trying to make that to be the culmination of everything, and it definitely felt like it in the sense of body horror. I don't think it felt like a final kind of boss battle to me, per se. Primarily because at that point in the movie, like... you kind of know that he seems to be the only person alive, so that thing doesn't have to pretend anymore, and that's when the stakes are kind of lost. But then, you know, he delivers the phrase,
"Yeah, fuck you too!"
and that's when you fall in love with it again.
Yeah, always gotta have the quips in the 80s, that part where you're Terminated fucker, you know, whatever, I forgot what he said. Yeah, you got those one-liners, that's the 80s for you, you know?
It's too good.
And honestly, the 80s is probably one of the best fucking decades for filmmaking, honestly.
In its own way, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are movies...
We could debate this.
There are movies that were made in the 80s that will not be made again. Like the first Terminator will never be made again. The Thing will never be made again.
Well, hey. Don't tempt them. Hollywood will do it.
Oh,
don't tempt them.
Bruh, we both know they'll do it anyway. But, you know, we will always be there to remind them that good shit is good shit, and their shit ain't always good.
Yep, and masterpieces like this is what we need.
God knows we didn't cover anything, like everything about this film. We probably just kind of scratched the surface, and
yeah, there's a lot left. Like there's the music, which adds to the tone such a really way.
Fuck!
So
don't
easy.
Get me started on the soundtracks. I actually have so many notes on this.
No, we can't read them all.
I know I'm not,
Oh,
but just like the violins, dude. Like the soundtrack of that film has low-key set up like a standard for what the soundtrack for every movie has to be. I'm positive horror films used violins before, and like that specific sound of the violin too. But holy crap, like if I ever have to make a reference to like
now every film uses violins.
Well,
every piece of product uses violins.
Yeah, but that's good though. Like the soundtrack in this film feeds into the atmosphere and the events so well. It's nightmare inducing, just like the visuals.
Yeah. Including the theme of the movie, like the theme that part. Yeah, that's a great score as well. It makes you feel uneasy as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to the disclaimer. God knows we didn't get to this far enough, but it's already been almost an hour. If you all want us to maybe make another episode on this, or talk more about this, or just talk to us about this, we're very chatty. Write in the comments or
we're
DM us on
very
Instagram.
Yeah. Exactly.
We love
Follow
to talk
us
about
on
these
Instagram.
things. And yeah. Enjoy the movie if you haven't seen it yet, because it's a fucking cinematic masterpiece that deserves your attention. Even if you're not into horror, even if you're not into body horror, it's just a brilliant piece of storytelling in its own. It has its flaws.
Absolutely.
Which we didn't get to talk about.
No.
Okay, it has no flaws. It's flawless.
No, if you think it has flaws, that's fine. I think it's flawless, but hey.
Yeah.
We all have a different.
No, they're so minute we shouldn't even mention it, honestly.
Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Last Minute Movies. If you like the video, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment if on differing opinions or you want to talk about the film with us. Hit us up on Instagram at Last Minute Movies, at last_minute_movies. I think that's what it is. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.